One of the things that we also are attempting to get across to people in the First Contact documentary is channeling is a natural state. We all do it. And it's just a matter of getting into that state and what you do with it. So I think more and more people are beginning to realize that, through either meditation or just getting into that zone, where you're doing what you love to do, you're at peak performance, you automatically shift into the channeling state. And it's actually represented by a particular brainwave frequency. One of the things that I'm very excited about within the documentary that I can't wait for people to see is we actually have some scientific evidence of the different state in the brain, because for the documentary, what I did is I got myself wired up to an EEG machine, a brainwave analysis machine, and did a channeling so I could see, is there a difference in the brain state between my normal waking state and the channeling state? And we discovered and can demonstrate that there is a profound difference.
You got to accentuate the positive. Wow, I feel good. A little bit of feel good goes a long way.
You're listening to Karen Swain, teacher of deliberate creation, accentuating the positive, showing you a way to a better life.
Accentuating the positive, it's not just fad, it's sanity. Who in their right mind would accentuate anything else?
If you feel like that's what you want.
Hello and welcome to another fascinating Conversations with Open Hearts and Inspired Minds on Accentuate the Positive with Karen Swain on Soul Traveller Radio. I am so delighted to introduce to you writer, director, producer and channel for Bashar, Darryl Anka. Hello, Darryl. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Karen. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
So great to have you on the show. So I've known about you for a while now, but I've got lots of questions I'm going to ask you. I'm just going to outline what we're going to discuss here today. We're not going to go too much into Darryl's story because Darryl's been doing this now. He's been talking about himself for about 33 years and the different things that you've done, but specifically about Bashar and how it happened. I want to talk about your life in general. I want to talk about Zia Films because I'm finding that very exciting. And then I'm going to bring in some questions about Bashar and grill you a bit about Bashar. But obviously you about 33 years ago, wasn't it?
That I started the channeling, yes.
That you started the channeling. So you were in your 30s then?
Correct.
Okay.
I was actually about 33 when I started.
Oh, really? 33 years ago, you were 33.
Yeah, roughly.
That's cool. So I was watching one of your films online actually, and someone asked you a question like, how has the channeling helped you, physically, your physical body? And you said very sort of tentatively, well, some people say that I might look a little bit younger than I am. And I looked at you and I thought, well, you're about my age. I reckon you look your age. And then you revealed your age and I went, no, wow. Do you want to reveal your age to people?
I'll be 65 in October.
You're looking good, honey. Looking good. And, and that's one of the questions I want to get into later when we talk about Bashar, how that frequency that you obviously evoke when you're channeling him, how it has changed your life and changed your physical body. Well, we'll just go into that now. How is that, bringing through the frequency of Bashar, because he's obviously a different dimensional being and he...
Yeah, well, I mean, mostly it's even more so than physically, really. It's mostly been a matter of emotional balance, mental balance and clarity. In applying, his ideas, his principles, it's really helped me to have a completely different and much broader, bigger picture point of view of life. And applying the concepts into life lets me experience far more synchronicity in my life. Everything just sort of smooths out in a much more positive way. So really, those are the major effects. I mean, we talk about the idea of being in the channeling state does allow me to experience a sensation of less time. It's very collapsed for me. And so, I'm sure there are physical effects, balancing effects, health effects, and so on and so forth. But I really think the stronger and more apparent effects are the effects of applying the information into my life and seeing the result from that.
Absolutely. Because, absolutely. With every channel that's bringing through higher consciousness, we're still humans, right? We're still human beings.
Absolutely.
We're still dealing with our ego mind and the forgetfulness. Whew. And we still have to navigate that. We still have to navigate that. And a lot of people think that, people like you who are bringing through exalted wisdom are living that in every moment. But like everyone here on the planet, you're grappling with these concepts and trying to inject the knowing into your life along with anyone else who's listening.
Yeah, I mean, I've had maybe the advantage of having a little bit more practice, and so definitely I'm definitely experiencing more effects from the information than I used to. So I am apparently progressing somewhat. But I mean, it's still been a journey, and I think it's always a journey for the channel too. The channel is never left out of the journey. It's all about clearing things out and becoming more of yourself. And as you do that, you also become more of a clear channel for the information and the entity. So it kind of works hand in hand.
So you've been channeling Bashar now for 33 years.
Yes.
And you've obviously been working in the film industry for about the same amount of time, haven't you? So you've led these two lives where you've had your career as a producer, director, special effects person. And
I started in special effects.
You started in special effects. And then the Bashar. How did the two, when you first started, because 33 years ago, there was not as much of this around as there is today. I mean, there were some amazing channels around, but they were very few and far between. These days, you look on the internet, and especially the young men, there's like every second young man is sort of channeling.
I know, it's everywhere,
Yeah, which is kind of exciting, right? I think
it is. And I think, one of the things that we also are attempting to get across to people in the First Contact documentary is channeling is a natural state. We all do it. And it's just a matter of getting into that state and what you do with it. So I think more and more people are beginning to realize that, through either meditation or just getting into that zone, where you're doing what you love to do, you're at peak performance, you automatically shift into the channeling state. And it's actually represented by a particular brainwave frequency. One of the things that I'm very excited about within the documentary that I can't wait for people to see is we actually have some scientific evidence of the different state in the brain, because for the documentary, what I did is I got myself wired up to an EEG machine, a brainwave analysis machine, and did a channeling so I could see, is there a difference in the brain state between my normal waking state and the channeling state? And we discovered and can demonstrate that there is a profound difference. And there are many differences. But the primary difference is the frequency in the brain goes into what is called the gamma state. And that's above 40 cycles per second all the way up to 100. Now, somewhere in there is representative of the channeling state. So anytime anyone is doing what they love to do, anytime anyone is in a deep meditation, when they're in that zone, peak performance, they will go into gamma. And then it's just a matter of how do you direct it from there? What are you interested in doing? How would you rather express that channeling state? And you can do it in any number of different ways. So that's one of the things I want to do, is demystify the whole concept that channeling is some bizarre woo-woo kind of thing. It's a natural altered state.
Oh, there's so many things I want to say to that. Exactly. I'm with you. I've experienced that same phenomenon in the dentist chair, and having the young sort of interns really go into that focused, concentrated state. And as an empath, I felt them just be, and it was actually just this bliss as they were just, focused, relaxed, enjoying what they were doing and focused. An accountant can do it.
Anyone can do it.
Yeah, a footballer.
As long as you are in that zone where you're doing what you love to do, you're in that thing. Yeah.
In that zone. Absolutely. That's such a great point. But, one of the things, I'm going to be totally honest here with you, when I first saw you channeling, which was probably about, 15 years ago, I I didn't want to have anything to do with it. Like I saw Bashar.
Yeah, who's that crazy guy? Okay. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I went, oh God, I don't want to have anything. And then I saw an interview with you, with Darryl Anka, and I really related to you. I thought, he's a cool dude. You know, I like this guy.
Thanks.
So it was interesting that to have that relatability, to be able to connect to the human, to the human being. And I went back to Bashar and I could watch everything very easily. And I was out of that critical mind.
I think that happens a lot. And it's actually for people that have seen snippets of the documentary, between the difference between the channelings we show in it and the interviews with me, one of the things people say right up front is, well, they thought it was going to be kind of bizarre, but when they see that I'm sort of a normal person, it grounds it for them, and they start to look at it in a different way. Absolutely. So again, not that anyone has to believe that Bashar is real, but what we're attempting to show is that from the altered state, the information is real, and it does actually have a profound effect on your life. So I think by everyone starting to know that they can relate to me, it can sort of make it a little easier for them to relate to Bashar.
Well, absolutely. And that was my experience. You know, we're on this Bashar trajectory, so I'll stay there. But I wanted to talk about Zia Films and some of the films that you've been making. But obviously, you know, we tried to connect, I don't know, a year or two ago, I can't remember, about Dearly Departed, because I bought that and watched that when I talked to you. Because I used to work in the film industry, so what did you do? Oh, I've done many things in the film industry, mostly catering, which is like the bottom of the rung. But
no, not at all. Hey, people got to eat. You run the show, because if it wasn't for catering, nobody would be working.
You know, it's that mother energy in me. I got to feed you. And now I'm feeding you enlightenment. I'm still feeding people. I'm just feeding people enlightenment. But, you know, I did props and set dressing and makeup and fashion. I did all the creative things. And it was really, really, really fun. I loved it. I worked on Babe, Pig in the City. And, but I really understand how films are so transformative, and I love what Zia's doing, because, you know, getting back to the brainwave, you know, when we're watching television, we go into that theta brainwave, or alpha theta, we start to relax, and the information coming off the screen is hypnotic.
It is.
It's absolutely hypnotic, and it seems to bypass the logical mind and go straight into the subconscious. And so media in general is such a powerful tool for shifting, for creating beliefs and thought forms. And
absolutely. And I think what we've also begun to realize is that, in particular, stories are a very, very strong way to transmit information, because story structure is not really an artificial structure. It's actually a component of our psyche. And therefore, when you tell a story and you hit all the right story points, all the right chords, it resonates with people, and it actually allows them to retain information much, much more readily when you tell a story in the correct format. So yeah, movies, all forms of storytelling, television is a very powerful way to transmit information.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I was having the same conversation with my last interview with Jamie Butler, who's this amazing medium. And, you know, talking about when I read all Wayne Dyer's books, it was his story about how he forgave his father. That was the only thing I remembered in any of the books, because it was his story.
Right.
And, you know, in order to teach anybody, it is our stories that teach. It is our personal journey. It's our story, because we've all got a story, you know.
We all are a story, yes.
We all are a story, exactly. I want to go back to the gamma, because you said in the film, so first contact, so we were talking about it when we were emailing a year or so ago, and now you're just editing, you're in the editing process. No,
I'm actually editing the bonus material that's going on the DVD. The film itself is done.
It's done. Yay, very exciting.
Done. In fact, it'll be, we're having screenings in a few theaters in Sedona, in Los Angeles, and in New York in September. And then it will come out as, you know, VOD, DVD downloads and all that in October. So it's done and just about ready to go. We're just doing all the publicity and everything now, and getting ready for, you know, everything we need for the DVDs and stuff.
So are you releasing it into theatre across the
We're having the 3 screenings for publicity purposes in those 3 cities, and using that to build up recognition for the actual release on DVD and VOD, so on and so forth.
Yeah, well, very exciting. So down under, this part of the hemisphere, this part of the world, we'll be able to get it in October.
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
I hope so. All things continue to go smoothly as they're going right now, yes.
And will that be distributed, through Zia Films, so it'll be on the website? Yeah,
there's a actual First Contact website, which is whatisfirstcontact.com. And we will be putting the information up there soon as to, people who are able to go to the actual screenings. And then eventually we'll have all of the connective links and information there for purchasing the VOD, DVDs, and downloads, yes.
Mm-hmm. So it's your story of Bashar and how you met him and what's going on.
How I became a channel, what he's all about, what his messages are about, and that this is all potentially a precursor to actual open contact with Earth. So.
Yeah. Something I want to talk about a bit later too, but I want to go back to you said that you were in a gamma when you had the hook up to the ECG. The gamma.
When I'm channeling,
when you're channeling, and the state of waking consciousness is?
Normal waking consciousness, I believe, is beta.
Beta, we say beta.
Okay.
And then alpha is like a relaxed state?
That's below, right. That's going down. But gamma is higher than beta.
Oh, okay.
Gamma is not a trance state. It's actually a state of heightened connectivity.
Delta. I'm thinking about delta.
Yeah, your delta is way down.
That's coma.
That's like 3 cycles per second and lower. Right. That's coma. But when you're in gamma, your brain is actually functioning in a much more accelerated rate at a much higher frequency than your normal waking state. It's making all sorts of connections and associations, and it's synthesizing and processing information at a much higher rate. So gamma is actually more of a superconductive state of the brain, above and beyond your normal waking state of comprehension.
But at the same time, you're amazingly relaxed.
Oh, absolutely. It's a state of flow. It's a state of less resistance. Yeah. So you kind of are, to put it, sort of paraphrase it, you're thinking smarter, not harder. You're making, more connections and associations more easily in the brain. So you actually don't have to sort of try and think. You actually sort of stop thinking and just sort of start accessing information in a different way. Receiving
as opposed to...
You're just receiving and letting it flow through. And the brain is processing the information in a way that it can turn into a translation that other people can understand. But you're not really thinking in the same way anymore when you're functioning as a vocal channel. You're just being a conduit and letting your brain automatically translate these vibrations into language.
So I've heard you say that you're not a unconscious channel. So when you're bringing through
I know there's something going on. I'm not hearing the words. It's kind of like it's like falling into an extremely dynamic daydream. It's like if somebody is if you're in a daydream and somebody's calling your name and you don't hear them, it takes like 3-4 times before you realize that somebody's talking to you. It's kind of like that. What you're experiencing is so much more energetic, so much more it's just where your focus is. You can't ignore it. I'm getting pictures, I'm getting feelings, I'm having downloads into me. But whatever's going on in terms of the translation for someone else might as well be happening next door, because it just has nothing to do with me. So it's kind of like that.
My daughter has accused me of not listening to her so many times, because I get into that state of, she's like, Mom, like, she's older now, she's an adult now, but I'm talking about when she was younger. And it's almost like they're in the distance. It's like they're not in your, even though you're in the same room.
It's not the reality that you're focused on at that particular moment.
And then she'll yell at me, "Can you not hear me? I'm standing right next to you." And I was like,
nope.
Sorry. But this is a common thing that humans do. I mean, to demystify the whole channeling thing, a lot of people do that deep state of concentration, and somebody's talking to them, the wife, the daughter, the husband, you know, and they say, you're not listening to me, but you're just off with the pixies, so to speak. You're in,
yeah.
You're in deep concentration, and you're in another place, in another frequency, in another dimension.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, it's just a different focus. You're just focused on something else that's going on, and letting something else kind of have its say. I mean, this is one of the things that, I'll give you a little tiny preview. This is one of the things we discovered by doing the EEG test is not only are there certain parts of the brain that are more connected and more active,
yes.
there are certain parts of the brain that shut off. And one of the parts of the brain that shuts off is the part that's responsible for processing personality. So if my personality center is shut down, who's talking? Right? Where's the information coming from? Because my brain at that point is incapable of processing my personality. Those centers are actually completely dormant during the channeling phase. So very interesting discovery.
Wow, that's fascinating. Come on, bring him up. I want to say hello.
Oh, all right. This is Cloud.
Oh, look at you. Oh, look at those eyes. Aren't they beautiful?
Yeah.
Oh.
He'll be off to the side there.
So cute. All righty. Well, let's stay on the Bashar trajectory. It's some questions that I had when I first saw you channeling. So this is what I was thinking. You know, I'm not going to listen to this because he's talking to an extraterrestrial. Why bother talking to an ET when you can go directly to source? Like you can talk directly.
Well, of course. I mean, that's the idea. That's exactly what Bashar is telling everyone. You can do this. You can do this yourself. You don't need him.
But in saying that, who is Bashar in that? I know he is an aspect of you in the future or in another dimension.
Looking at it from a linear point of view.
Looking at it from a linear point of view. So I'm just making sure this doesn't hit the microphone. And is he your higher self?
No. He's my future self, if you want to look at it from a linear point of view. In other words, if we want to look at it from a space-time idea, it's like he's one of my future incarnations, I'm one of his past incarnations. But of course, from his perspective, everything exists at the same time, just in different parallel realities. What we call the future, what we call the past, are simultaneously coexisting. They're just in different frequencies. So the reason that we can actually even have the channeling is because my future self and his past self both exist at the same time. And he has the ability to make that connection in his consciousness. And that's why a channeling can occur.
Okay,
so
but he's a physical being.
He is.
Although a different frequency, living in a different dimension.
Correct.
So when he is is he consciously communicating with you, or is he communicating with you when he's asleep? Or
No. It's a deliberate connection.
So when he's living his life in his planet, in his dimension, wherever he is, and he's communicating through you,
yes,
is he still talking to other people in his environment?
He can, because his consciousness is that multifunctional. However, more often than not, he has said he's usually in his ship and in some sort of state of repose in order to help facilitate the connection a little bit more clearly. So he can multitask, but normally he's focused on what he's doing.
So this is what I'm getting from my mob, because I'm in my personality mind, who, asking those linear questions.
Sure.
And they're saying to me that you're trying to decipher this through your linear mind time. And he's not in the same time frame.
Correct.
So I'm thinking that, all those times that you're channeling him, he's got to stop and go, hang on, Darryl's calling.
No. And in fact, more often than not, it's kind of the other way around. But no, because time for him is really, truly not what it is for us. And often he has said, when we're having the conversation with him on our end, he may have already had the conversation. He may have yet to have the conversation. He can shift his consciousness up and down his timeline to have the conversation when it's convenient for him. So it's never an interruption.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so that sorted that out, because that was something that
Yeah.
I was confused about, because again, we're trying to decipher what's going on from a linear, from a third dimensional perspective, and we're not talking third dimensional. So why is you as a teacher, as a channel, talking to him? I know the answer to this, but I want it from you, and not to your higher self or to a mob or source energy.
Well, I am. I do that too.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, he functions in many ways like a mask for the higher self.
Mm-hmm.
He functions as a permission slip to give us the ability to give ourselves permission to communicate with our higher selves more easily by using him as kind of a model, in a sense, of what that would be like. So I do. I definitely rely on my own higher self in my daily life. So I'm becoming, let's say he's rubbing off on me, and I'm becoming more like my version of him in my own life. And therefore, it's not like I go running to him or anything like that. In fact, I actually have very few conscious connections with him in the sense of him exchanging information with me. I mostly connect to him to help other people get the translation. If I need something from him, it's just there in a flash. It's just a telepathic hit.
Mm-hmm.
I only need to go into the other altered state so that it translates into language for you or someone else. But again, it still happens very rarely. He wants me to live my own life. He doesn't want me to come running to him every 5 seconds. And I don't want to do that. You know, I want to know that I can rely on myself, as everyone needs to. So, yeah.
But yourself and your own higher self, your inner guidance, because I rely on my inner guidance. Sure. I mean, when I'm in a state of grieving or confusion, obviously I'm locked out, or maybe concentration, like editing film.
Yes. I'm like, well, that's when I am using my higher self, really. Is like when I'm in the groove. You know?
Absolutely. But, you know, when you're locked out from that connection to your broader perspective,
yeah,
and you're in the little mind, and that little mind has you completely immersed, you know, and you can't access that. So obviously you're accessing your connection, having practiced it for so long with your greater self, with your broader perspective, and you're using that when you're editing and in your daily life, you're using that guidance.
More and more and more. Yeah, it's becoming more, let's say, first nature rather than second nature. It's becoming more automatic. It's becoming my default position to go into that state for my own purposes. Yeah.
Ah, beautiful. Well, just getting back to the whole alien thing, you know,
the whole alien thing.
Well, we talked about this no linear time, and as I understand it, you know, the denser planes, third dimensional reality, is a pretty tough ride.
It's challenging.
It's a challenging ride because we have that Maya, that forgetfulness. And I think that higher dimensional existences, like other alien existences, we call them alien existences, higher frequencies. It's an easier ride because we're more connected to our broader perspective.
Yeah, in many ways it is, although I have to say that from Bashar's perspective, he says, of course, there are still challenges. There will always be challenges. And therefore, the challenges for those levels are going to be very different than the challenges for this level.
Well,
certain will be easier. Yes, certain things will be easier.
That was one of my questions. What are his challenges? Like, what are the challenges?
I mean, he explores other realities, other dimensions. He's an explorer. He's a first contact specialist.
Yeah.
So some of the challenges are in dealing with other races that are so different that they really have to alter their perspective to even begin to understand them. That's one of the challenges that he's described that his civilization encounters quite a bit, is really adapting and attempting to understand a perspective of something that is truly, truly alien, even to them. So that's one of the challenges that they face. Of course, like anyone, they're always growing, they're always learning, they don't know everything.
Yeah.
And, you know, but they're definitely on a higher plane than we are, and they've left behind many of the things that we still believe are challenging for us. But they do have their own challenges, and I'm not even sure we can imagine what some of their challenges are like. The only real difference is they face every challenge from a positive perspective. There's no struggle or suffering in their experience in terms of going through a challenge.
Well, absolutely. So, you know, Hollywood has perpetuated the idea that an alien race, a more evolved race, technically evolved race, would be of some threat. So that's been the paradigm that has been perpetuated through our media system. And if you look at it from a logical point of view, in order to evolve emotionally, intellectually, technologically, you really have to evolve spiritually. And so you have to come to an understanding that we're all one. There's no separation. What I do for you, you do for me. You come to a more collective understanding. And when you come into that collective understanding, you're not wanting to kill anybody.
No, it doesn't. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't mean that every extraterrestrial race that exists is necessarily that evolved. But I think that the ones that we're dealing with here are, and have our best interests at heart for the most part. So I'm saying it's not impossible to run across an alien civilization that's not necessarily any more evolved than we are, or even less evolved than we are. And some of them may be operating very negatively, but I do believe that the ones that are capable of really reaching out, really understanding what's going on and communicating with us in this way, have to, by definition, be positive, especially in terms of the channeling thing, because information that comes through in this form can only work if there is a integrative connection happening, and an integrative connection doesn't happen from a negative state of being.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that completely smashes the myth that we're going to be invaded by aliens that are going to destroy the planet, which loves to do. So this
it's fun. It's like riding a roller coaster. It gives us an opportunity to sort of play with our fears in a safe environment and have a sort of a transformation about that. So, you know, it serves a purpose.
Okay,
and
sure.
Get all that out of our system.
Good perspective.
It's like somebody riding a roller coaster, and you know, okay, it's scary for a minute, but you know you're basically safe. And so you go through the ride and you come out the other end feeling a little bit stronger. So that's answered a question that I had about the horror films on Zia that you've got coming up. So what you're saying is, you know, from the new age perspective, you know, everything's love and light and positive and all that sort of thing. What you're saying is we can explore our fears through film instead of through life, you know, fighting with people and killing people, like put it on a virtual screen and work out your fears and your limiting ideas there, rather than working them out. Okay. Right, exactly. If we tell even a horror story properly, then there can be a catharsis in it that can allow people to actually go through a fear in the process of watching the movie and come out of it not necessarily feeling the same way. So it just depends on how you do it. I mean, you know, we're not the kind of production company that would just make slasher movies. That's just not what we do. But we're talking about, you know, real explorations, real experiences that go into some of those, you know, fear-based beliefs and those experiences that we are afraid might happen to us. And it can get a little fantastical in terms of some of the stories we're telling. But in many ways, that's what sort of helps us use those stories to sort of create an arc where people get through it and they feel more empowered at the end by overcoming those fears. That's really the way we prefer to design a horror movie.
Darling, you're ticking all the boxes. You're ticking off all the boxes because, you know, like I'm looking online and I'm thinking, he's making horror movies. Why is he making horror movies? The question.
I know some people say that, but then, you know, and in fact, we're actually, to let you know, we're actually working on a sci-fi horror Halloween attraction as well. But again, it's for fun. You know, it's people know it's not real. And there's definitely a difference that happens in the brain when you know it's not real. And that's what allows you to have the thrill and the chills, but allows you to really know you're going to come out of this okay. And you're going to be maybe a stronger person for having faced your fear in going through the attraction or seeing the movie. And again, we're purposely designing it in a way so that you actually have the incentive to do that. We're not just sort of, you know, leaving you in a puddle of sweat at the end of the experience or the end of the movie. We're giving you opportunities to overcome that fear in the experience itself.
So Zia's films are all transformative films. Some are about, let me go on the website, some are about horror, as we've discussed. Where are we? I'm just looking on the website. Ooh, The Hangman. You've got right. Ghost Town.
Well, that's a comedy.
Is that a comedy? Okay, this is Supernatural. Under the heading Supernatural.
Yeah, Ghost Town is the idea of, it's the reverse of the idea of a person coming and finding a haunted house. It's a town where all the people are ghosts and a living family comes into the town. So it's like kind of like there goes the neighborhood from the ghost's point of view. So it's kind of the reverse.
I love that. I love that because, you know, I was talking to Lisa Williams. She's quite a well-known medium in that she's out there in the mainstream talking to dead people on television, a bit like a John Edwards.
Right.
And, you know, one of the questions that everyone asks is my loved one okay? And I said to her, you know, from that perspective, it's such bliss in that non-physical environment that really the question, when people are born into a denser plane, into a physical environment, it should be, are my loved ones okay?
Yeah, are we okay? Yeah, because they're fine up there. The question is, are we doing okay?
Okay, so we've got The Stab Collector, Supernatural Thriller. Woohoo!
Yes.
And shadow boxing. What's that about?
Shadow boxing is actually based on a true story. We have the rights to the story of this person, James Clark, who had a really interesting transformation in his life where he kind of grew up with a bit of a rough family life where his father sort of, in a sense, even though while he was teaching him to sort of be a boxer, he also sort of used him to as a thug, kind of in the sense of if anyone dishonored the family, he would actually force his son to go out and beat them up or not come home. So essentially this turned him into a very angry youth. And he was starting to kind of go outside the law and break all the rules, and eventually got himself into trouble to the point where he had to run away, and he joined the Navy SEALs instead of getting arrested. But he was still an angry person. So he got into trouble there, wound up actually getting thrown into the brig, and it was going to be pretty much for life. But through a series of circumstances, he managed to get out. But while he was in jail, in solitary, he discovered the only thing in that cell with him that somebody, for some reason, had left there was a book on Plato's metaphysics. And he started reading it, and it completely transformed his life to the point where he started, after he got out of jail, demonstrating amazing feats of strength and power through the idea of self-empowerment, and rechannel the energy to the point where he went from basically being a delinquent and a dangerous person to a master of martial arts and a teacher of metaphysics today. So it's a very transformative story. We're very excited about telling that story. And so we're, looking for people to help us, finance and make that movie, because it's something that's very close to our hearts.
Oh, darling, I just love what you're doing with this, because as we've discussed already, it's, movies are such a transformative tool. They're such a hypnotic tool, both to embed and imprint negative belief structure as well as positive, expansive, transformative ideology.
Yes, absolutely. And now with, what's going on in television today as well, we're developing a couple of TV series as well, because you're getting a lot of really, really good stories on TV now that are equal to and sometimes even surpassing some of the films that are out there in terms of the characters that you can create, and the stories that you can tell over time can in many ways be much more powerful than just a 2-hour movie. So we're getting into that field as well.
Well, absolutely, because most of the sitcoms on television are so entrenched in third dimensional, I hate you, let's fight, let's talk about each other, let's gossip, let's kill the enemy. I mean, even Star Wars. Look, I'm a big fan of Star Wars. Not Star Wars, what do you call it? The other
Star Trek.
Star Trek, thank you.
Yes.
Star Trek. But even the new stuff that's coming out, it's still this polarized the enemy stuff. It's about fighting the enemy, even though it's for a good cause to save the galactic or whatever they're doing. But I'm sure that when you're in that higher dimensional frequency, you're not fighting any enemies anymore. As I said to you before, what are his challenges? Challenges are completely There's different challenges as opposed
there are. And even in this reality, I mean, Bashar has said that, you know, even when you get to the point where you have let go of all of your negative and fear-based beliefs, it's still going to be a process of letting go after that point of things that are simply no longer relevant for you. But well, that's going to be a personal journey for everyone, but it's an issue of streamlining. Certain ideas, certain concepts may simply no longer be relevant in your life, and you may change your lifestyle based on that. I mean, a simple example might be, well, it's not necessarily a negative belief that you might be eating certain foods, but if you get to a point where you simply don't need them anymore, they're not relevant for you anymore, you'll just let them go. That's a very simplistic example, but that's the idea. You just keep streamlining and refining yourself to a certain point. And really the whole idea, just to use the word that is used in stories, the whole idea of conflict is, even though there may be the creation of an external conflict, the real strong and most powerful stories just use that as a symbol for the internal challenge and the internal conflict that turns a character from one kind of person into another kind of person. That's the stories that really stick. So it's not about the idea of eliminating conflict from the story. It's how do you use that conflict to actually allow a transformation to occur in your character that creates a symbol, a very powerful symbol of change for the people watching that journey. And so that's really how you use the idea of the external, villains or the external challenge that seems to be conflictive in a positive way. It's not really about eliminating that from the story. It's about overcoming and transforming that in the story.
Well, definitely in our reality, definitely what mainstream humanity is watching. But I was talking about from the perspective of higher dimensional beings.
They have different challenges and they have different stories to tell. And we'll find that out when we get there.
I know.
But right now we're still on Earth, and so we're transforming the Earth into a different kind of an Earth through some of the same principles that we understand exist on the higher levels, but we still need to do it through the language of physical reality so that people get it. Otherwise, it'll just be a little too alien to them, to use a phrase.
Yeah.
But we're getting there.
We are. It's a fun ride. Okay, so sci-fi. I'm still on Zia Films. You've got Disclosure, a sci-fi thriller and a TV series, as we were talking about.
Yeah, and that's all about the entire UFO story from beginning to end, not only from our point of view, but from the aliens' point of view as well, leading to the idea of disclosure of the presence.
Well, that's interesting because I've heard Bashar talk about disclosure because it seems to be a question that a lot of people ask him. Because, look, here's the gig. So you believe in aliens, mainstream thinking has said, if you do, you are crazy. So that's been an imprinted thought form that...
Well, more specifically, if you believe the aliens are here, you're crazy. Mainstream science is perfectly willing to accept that there are extraterrestrials at this point. It's just that most scientists still don't quite understand or believe that they could actually get here, or that UFOs might be representative of such beings. That's the next thing we need to break through is, and some scientists are doing that. In fact, that's again one thing that we cover briefly in the documentary, is there are many scientists that are actually now demonstrating, at least mathematically, that it is not inconceivable that beings can go from star to star in relatively short periods of time. We just have to think a little bit more outside the box technologically about how that can be accomplished. And we also, in showing those theories, we also demonstrate from Bashar's point of view how they do it, which is a very different idea from the way our scientists are thinking. But both of them are still about the idea of the ability of being able to get from one star to another in a very short amount of time.
Yeah, well, that's getting back to, that's a question I had on my little list there, is how does he how does Bashar's gang, mob, tribe travel?
It's, yeah, well, like I said, we we explain that in the doc, and we use graphics to make it a little easier to understand.
Okay.
Because it can, it's a very different way of looking at reality. And it can get a little bit confusing. But let's just say it has to do with certain frequencies that they understand that we don't. Certain things about the structure and nature of physical reality that we don't quite get. And it's just more easily explained the way we explain it in the documentary, because we have graphics to go along with it. And it doesn't get too technical, because it can. But yeah, he explains very clearly how they do it.
Well, I'm probably going to ask you a lot of questions that'll be in the documentary, because that's kind of how I operate. Like, I totally tune in subconsciously. You know, it's not even a conscious thing. Like, I'm
Sure.
But okay, so let's get back to Zia. In the nick of time. So, we're getting back. So this is one of the constructs that you're explaining with the time, with the travel. It's about time. It's all about the construct of time.
Yeah, but that's a actual, at least at the moment, that's designed to be a cartoon for children. That is about a hero, Nick, who can travel through time and has to kind of prevent someone who wants to change history to make themselves the ruler of the earth. And he has to sort of defeat that person and bring everything back to the way it was each time, and do it in, quote unquote, the nick of time. So, yeah, it's a fun comedy cartoon that is ostensibly for children, but also, of course, will appeal to the adults with a lot of the concepts that are in it, we hope. So, yeah, we're working on that too.
Boy, you got a lot on your plate there.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
And there are things that actually aren't even there at this particular moment that we're focused on right now that I can't tell you about.
Okay, so all these things on the website, you're looking for funding. I mean, they're in different levels of progress. Some need complete funding, some need partial funding, some are in production.
It just depends. You know, we take them as they come. We follow our own synchronicity in terms of who comes to us and who gets interested in helping us produce any of these things from one point or another. So yeah, they're all in various stages of either, you know, development or pre-production or what have you. But you know, we just take it as it comes and follow our own excitement, which is exactly what Bashar would have us do anyway. So
I'm just loving this one, Roswell the musical.
You know, it's about time that some kind of a musical stage play told that story. So we're working on that too.
Another one called Alienated. Fabulous.
Yeah, that's another comedy.
That's a comedy. I love it. And The Ark. Ooh.
The Ark is a big sci-fi movie. Yeah, that's a you know, that's way up there. That's something that's probably down the line a bit in terms of our ability to handle that in terms of funding and production scope and all of that. But that's a very large scale sci-fi movie with lots of special effects in it.
Oh, wow. And then a couple of horror movies we've got here. The zombie doc, or does that say pop or doc?
It's Doc Zombie. And it's a completely different twist on the zombie genre that, again, I cannot tell you about right now. But it's something that's never really been done before. And
okay.
So we're
and
excited.
The Dare. Horror, The Dare.
The Dare is, yeah. That's a little bit more straightforward, old-fashioned horror story. But again, deals with transformation in a variety of ways. So I'm not going to tell you more about that either.
Gosh. Okay. So I heard you say when you were telling your story to another interviewer that obviously Bashar started coming through when you took a channeling class, and you took the channeling class not because you wanted to be a channel, but because you were fascinated, interested.
I was researching.
Interested. And I was just, you know, like whatever we're interested in, whatever we're fascinated in that we want to research to the point of going to do a class is usually always, you know, something that is a part of your life plan, for instance. But you met a lovely girl in that class that you met.
I did.
And she's been your wife all these years.
All this time, Erica, right? And Erica is actually my producing partner at Zia Films.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And on the website, it says that she was a dancer and that she's worked in many films herself. One of them was Staying Alive with John Travolta, SOB with Julie Andrews, Adventures in Dinosaur City. Oh, she's done so much. And she's also written and published a novel.
She has, called Robin's Nest. I'm very proud of her for doing that. Yes, she's actually an excellent writer as well. So we have a lot in common on that level, and we work very well together as partners in a production company. It's a lot of fun.
Oh, beautiful. So obviously you met Erica during that time when you first started to bring through Bashar. So there was no dating a woman and saying,
right.
by the
I didn't
way.
have to break the news to her. Yeah, by the way.
By the way, I channel an alien.
Yeah, goodbye. Whatever happened to that girl I dated?
Well, that was easy.
That wasn't an issue. That wasn't a challenge. Thank goodness. She was there.
That was nice and easy for you. But I suspect that easier now, maybe still not easy, but looking at, we've just explored all the things on your website, so so you're sort of completely immersed in the whole alien phenomena and transformation. It's like completely, you're marinating in transformation. But all those years ago,
haven't heard it put quite that way, but I'll take that. Yes.
Do you like that one? I like that.
I like that one. Yeah.
But all those years ago when you first started channeling, what was life like for you trying to explain it to people that didn't get it?
Well, I mean, it's always a little bit of a challenge, but I also find that I haven't attracted that many people who either don't get it at some level or who I really have to explain it to. In fact, I was working in special effects when I began doing the channeling and began doing regular sessions, and somebody in the company noticed, I would go off, leave about the same time every week, to do something, and it was very clockwork-like, and it was very different than me just leaving at a regular hour to go home. And she finally asked, where do you go on Thursday nights? And then it was like, okay, here it comes. Here's the speech. Let's see how this sells. And I started very gently, because I never bring it up unless someone else brings it up. There's really no point in doing so. So I just sort of very gently talked about the idea of exploring, spiritual concepts and going to seminars and doing this kind of thing. And I only really got part of the way through it. And she just turned to me and goes, "Oh, you're a channel."
Yeah.
And I go, "Wait, how do you know about that?" She said, "Oh, my mom's been channeling for years." So I immediately realized that it wasn't really going to be that big of a deal for me in my life. I just wasn't really attracting people that would find it that odd. I'm sure there are people who find it extremely odd, but I guess they find it odd enough that they don't even want to interact with me. So I never really have that conversation with them. All the people that I've had the conversation with are either people who are friends or have become friends or who are already exploring that kind of stuff within their own life anyway. Mm-hmm. So I think that by the time they find me, the things that I manage to say to them are striking enough of a chord that it makes sense to them. They're at a place in their life where they actually need to have attracted themselves to someone who's going to talk to them about it. And therefore, there really aren't that many bumps in the road on the journey that I've experienced with regard to getting this across. Even my own parents, when they were alive, they didn't understand what I was doing at all. They didn't understand really what channeling was. Mm. But the bottom line for them was they understood that what I was doing was helping people. And that's what was important to them. And so they were fine with it on that level. So I didn't really need to explain it. They just understood that people were getting a benefit out of it. And as far as they were concerned, then I was doing something good. So, it hasn't really been that big of an issue in my life for some reason.
Well, that's a beautiful answer. And I asked this question for all the people that are attracted to you because they're bringing through their own channeling and they're grappling with, how do I tell my mom about this?
Well, you don't have to tell anybody, really. I mean, it's not something you need to force on anyone. I think if it comes up naturally in the conversation, then that's fine. But I don't go out of my way to tell people, it's not something that is everyone's cup of tea, and I recognize it and I respect that. So, there's just no need. The ones that need to find it will find it. I have no agenda to force it on anyone.
But, you know, now that you're quite, I thought that you were really well known, but I said to a few people during the week, my conscious friends,
Yeah.
guess who I'm talking to next week? And they're like, who? And I went,
who? Yeah, who?
So I
Who's
said to
that?
about 3 or 4 people, and they had no idea who you are. And I'm like, I
Yeah.
thought you were really well known. But anyway, maybe
I am to people that know me.
not that well known. Anyway.
Well, let's see what happens after the film comes out, because, you know, that'll probably be another level of exposure.
Absolutely.
But again, I find that, you know, I mean, there are a lot of people that do know me, but I also find that there are certainly more that don't. And I think the idea is that a lot of, you know, what I found that's interesting is a lot of people know the channels that are channeling beings that are more or less, let's say, spirit, or
like Abraham.
Other dimensional in that way. But I find that the idea of connecting to an ET is another level yet again that a lot of people just aren't ready for. They can accept the idea of the spirit thing. Some people have a little bit of confusion about how this is actually supposed to happen with a physical extraterrestrial. And so I think that it's a place that they can ultimately get to. And more people are sort of getting there and making that connection and understanding the similarities between channeling a spirit and channeling an extraterrestrial being, because the channeling process is the same for both entities. It doesn't really matter. But there's that little extra step of, oh, wait a minute, you're saying this is a real being, a physical being in our reality that I could actually meet someday? Mm-hmm. That's another leap for a lot of people. And I think that slowly people are getting to that point. But a lot of people are not there. And that's okay if they're not. It may, again, not really be the road they need to take. But I find that there's a distinct line in the sand in the metaphysical community between the idea of channeling a spirit and channeling an alien. So we'll see what happens.
Absolutely. And it's just an opening and an expansion and an allowing and an acceptance of, and you know, if you've seen my emails, life is a journey of infinite possibility. It's like infinite possibility. And so it's that cracking open of the critical mind that says, oh, that's bullshit. You know, so many things that I've gone, oh, that's bullshit. My mind's been cracked open. It's like infinite possibility. What if? And I mean, it was even cracked open more last year with some of the authors that I spoke to, and, you know, read about different dimensions and alien life forms and planets, and it's mind-blowing what's out there. You know, it is. And I think, you know, there are more and more people who are open-minded about that, at least enough to explore it and not just dismiss it out of hand, which is great. I mean, that's, you know, what led, I don't know if you noticed on the website that we were very lucky in getting the actor James Woods to be our narrator for First Contact. And, you know, when we met him, you know, he actually said, you know, this is the kind of thing where, you know, it's not about just believing it, but it's at least being open-minded enough to ask the questions and explore it. And so, you know, he was exactly the perfect person to narrate this. And it gives it a little bit, I think, more credibility and more grounding to see that someone like that is willing to say, you know, you just have to explore these things. You can't just dismiss them. And so we're very, you know, indebted and grateful to James Woods for being willing to come on board and, you know, and give us a little bit more gravitas than we otherwise might have had. So. Yeah, I want to ask you about, I've got so many questions in my mind, but I want to ask you about this, the mudra. But just before I do that, you know, I saw Deepak Chopra speak probably 20 years ago here in Sydney. I took a girlfriend who was just opening up to spirituality. Anyway, and he was talking about the reality of Beam Me Up, Scotty. So Deepak was in his expanded mind at that point. I think he brought it right back down after that, because people were just walking out of the auditorium in droves.
Okay.
Because he was talking about, we're all holographs, and he was just...
it might have been a little too far, too fast.
It was fabulous. I loved it. But my girlfriend just looked at me like, what have you gone to? And I didn't know that Deepak was going to go there, but he went there this day. And he was talking about how the Beam Me Up, Scotty, you know, dematerializing and rematerializing. Right. You know, there's a very real reality in that. And does Bashar talk about that at all?
He has. Certainly he has.
And what's
I mean, he'll go, well, I mean, that's a very long conversation. Because he'll go deeply into the physics of it all.
Right.
And in fact, he's actually had, I mean, this is still astonishing to me, because I'm not a physicist. But Bashar has had conversations with physicists who have been bold enough to actually be okay with having a conversation with a channeled entity.
Fabulous.
And, they walk out of those private sessions very happy with the information that he's given them. So he can talk on that level and take them beyond, where they're at this particular point in a way that they can comprehend. So, those kinds of questions are things he does address. But, to go into them now, first of all, I don't even remember half of what he says because I'm not listening in during the private sessions.
Yeah.
I get the aftermath of it. But he definitely does cover a lot of those different kinds of subjects that have to do with physics and how reality physically works. Now, the mudra you're talking about is not something that I intentionally ever did. That was simply my body's reaction to the energy through me.
Yep.
Bashar has explained that it's a focusing mechanism, a balancing mechanism, and because the mudra is usually over my solar plexus in the middle of my body, it's what he calls the chakra of intention, and it's helping to sort of like a lens focus the vibration that's coming through me from his energy in a way that's directing it toward the people he's speaking to. So it's like an amplifier or a magnifier of that frequency so that he can focus it in a very laser-like concentrated way to the people that he's delivering information and vibrations to in the conversations. So that's just one of the natural things that happened when I started channeling, along with the deep breathing that you also hear. It's just an aligning system. It allows my body to take in more oxygen while breathing less often in order to support the extra energy that's coming through my body so that it, in fact, doesn't tire me out or wear me out.
Oh, look, absolutely. Why I ask is that my body does it too. And I have seen myself do it and I go, oh, that's what Bashar does. And then my critical mind gets in the way and is like, are you just copying Bashar?
Well, in some ways, every channel I find in my research from each generation, whoever teaches them or whoever they sort of lock onto as a symbol or a representation, they'll pick up some of the same traits because that is the state that you sort of need to get in that represents being in the proper state to bring that stuff through. So it's like anything. I mean, if you're playing a piano and you have a teacher, you're going to follow the way the teacher is teaching you, and you're going to make similar hand motions and so on and so forth. So even in channeling, you're going to see some similarity from channel to channel when people get in that state, because there are certain things our bodies do to translate that energy in a certain way that works for us. So it's not surprising that you'll see some of the same traits. So in a sense, it's a copying, but in a sense, it's really just this is what the energy does to us. This is how to translate it. This is how to balance it best by putting your body into this state,
Yeah.
So it's a natural thing.
It was an excellent answer because I, again, wondered why I was doing it, like what's the meaning of it. And it feels very good. It feels very natural.
Yeah,
and talking to you now, it's like it's natural for my hands to just do that. Because I used to do this for a long time. I used to put one hand over the top, and then I saw a Buddha statue, and then someone told me that there was a specific mudra, and that specific mudra meant something, and I went, I do that naturally. But then it shifted to this. So it's interesting how your body...
It'll evolve like anything. Different states of being will require different body language.
Yeah.
That represents the state you're in at that point.
And with the breathing, because I remember the channeling happened spontaneously for me in that I had known about it, I'd seen it, and I suspect that I was asking for it, summoning it. But
I'm sure you probably were.
Yeah, but it would happen during I was massaging. There was a Hollywood movie star, because I used to work in the film industry, and then when I was massaging, my friends would send me, people from overseas, and I massaged a lot of Hollywood movie stars. And one particular one had a picture of a guru on her thing, and I started asking questions like, what's this Indian guru thing about? And I started to expand, and that breathing thing just started happening, but my head was like,
yeah, but see, having attracted synchronistically the ability to massage all those people probably started giving you the opportunity to practice flowing energy through your body. So that was your way of doing that. Everyone has their own way. Yeah.
I had to change because I would touch people, I would know so much information about them, and I couldn't help but, like an out of control train, like the information was coming through, and I just had to stop calling myself a masseuse because people were coming, although I know that there is no accidents, they're all happy accidents. But I remember there was one particular Hollywood movie star who's quite well known that was out here, and I was telling him all this stuff, and he was just looking at me like this, going, like,
right, who's touching me here?
He was just
Am I in trouble? Am I in danger? Who's this crazy woman?
Who is this crazy woman? And I remember looking at the expression on his face thinking, okay, I've got to stop calling myself a masseuse.
Yeah. Just own up to it. Yeah.
Just own up to it. But that breathing, you know, I think Esther's, you know, spirit, inspire. There's that whole, like, when you inspirate, you draw in spirit, and it's just natural that your breathing expands when you expand your consciousness.
And again, it's, you know, the body needs more oxygen to support the higher frequency energies.
Yeah, interesting.
So it just kind of automatically started doing that when I went into the channeling state. Yeah.
Interesting. Oh, darling, I tell you. Inward bound. That was something that I saw. I saw you channeling. As I was researching you for this, I was looking online, and I was thinking, what did Darryl look like when he had hair?
We have several shots of that in the documentary, as you see a progression of me channeling over the years. I get losing more and more hair. Yes, I'm becoming more like Bashar, who has no hair.
You know what, I have to say, this morning as I was blow drying these luscious locks, I had a little mob up there telling me to enjoy the hair. You know, we don't have any. Enjoy it. And I'm thinking, it's nice to have hair, isn't it?
No, don't have to.
Yeah, so Inward Bound, there was a thing you said on that document, it was a television show, which was, I guess it was about 29 years ago. And
but I was just a subject on that,
I was thinking progressive for 29 years ago. And the guy was appealing to you and asking you to channel Bashar. And the audience were asking really great questions. And I was thinking, time. So you were talking a lot about, as many audiences do, they ask about the future. What's in our future? And I was thinking as I was watching this, we are their future. So I was having that, you know, that we are living what they were asking about, because I think Bashar was talking about in 20 years, this is going to happen. And in 10 years, this is
You're seeing more and more and more of that kind of coming to pass. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, just the fact that we can even, you know, most people, whether they buy into it or not, at least are using the word channeling nowadays to say different things. So, you know, 20 years ago, if you said that word, they wouldn't have a clue what you were talking about. So at least there's more and more of that information, and more people exploring consciousness, more and more people open to the idea that things that seemed impossible before may not be so impossible now. You know, so there's definitely a lot of things that we were talking about back then that I'm seeing more and more of. And I think more people are not feeling so isolated about that anymore, because I know that many people, including myself, you know, when they got into this, felt like there's no one else around who talks this way, who understands this stuff. And so I think now more and more people are finding kindred spirits who understand this particular journey. And that's a big difference now.
And where is your future going? What do you see happening in the future? I mean, obviously you've got a zillion Zia Films happening, so you're going to be pretty busy for the next.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can't really say that I absolutely know, because certainly it's about living more in the present and just sort of seeing what unfolds and then relating to that in the most positive and creative way. So certainly I see continued expansion and continued expressions of creativity and being more of myself I can sort of guess that a lot of that will happen not only in the channelings, but with the films as well. But beyond that, I'm not even really willing to make a guess, because I certainly don't want to limit the ways in which it could happen in ways I can't even imagine at this point. So I'm willing to be present with it, whatever happens, and go with the flow. And as long as I keep doing what excites me the most, I know that whatever unfolds will be in most alignment with me. And I can't really ask for more than that.
Yeah, exactly. So Bashar talks a lot about timelines, and, you know, there's a big thought form that, you know, if I go to a psychic, she's going to tell me my future. But then, of course, you talk to Bashar and there is no future.
He's saying there's no such thing as a prediction of the future. The psychic is picking up on the energy that exists in the present. Yeah. If you don't change it, it might come to pass. But sometimes the psychic prediction can actually render itself obsolete because now you know about it. So you might say, well, she's telling me this or he's telling me this, and I'm not really sure I'm aligned with what they're picking up right now. Therefore, maybe I'll change it. And therefore, it may seem like the prediction is wrong, but the prediction may have been exactly correct about the information and energy that existed at that moment. And you deciding to go down a different path have now changed the outcome, changed the energy. Therefore, you've made the prediction obsolete. It doesn't mean it was wrong to begin with. It may have been exactly correct at that moment, but we still have the free will to make choices. That's what's really all about. So predictions to me are like, okay, they're sensing mechanisms, they're guiding mechanisms. It's like, this is what I'm picking up that exists right now. Are you aligned with that? Are you not aligned with it? You prefer this, you prefer something else. I think that's the better way, the more constructive way to use the idea of prediction, because there's so many probable futures that the only thing you can do is really navigate from the present. So if someone is sensitive enough and clear enough to really pick up on the energy that exists in the present, then you can certainly use that as a tool to guide yourself in deciding what you prefer or don't prefer to experience from that point forward. That's how I would look at it.
Absolutely. I think, you know, the Seth material was teaching me a million years ago, all your power is in the now.
Exactly.
And, you know, I have a fabulous example of what you're talking about. So when I was about 18, 19, there was 4 of us that went to Hawaii to party on down. And we all went to a bazaar and had a psychic reading, right? And my girlfriend, who said to me years later, Kristen, she said to me years later, you know, I don't believe in any of that psychic stuff. And I said, why not, Kristen? She said, remember when we were in Hawaii and we had that reading? She said, that reader told me that I was going to die young, a violent death. And I looked at her and I said to her, you were. Because she was this pretty young girl who loved dating gangsters. Like, she just thought the more, you know, dangerous you were, that was really attractive to her. And she dated a lot of gangsters, and one of them was gunned down. We had this television show here in Australia called Underbelly or something. A lot of her boyfriends were in that. You know, one of them was gunned down in the street. And in that timeline, she was directly in alignment for that future, because and then
at the time, it's like they picked up on the danger in that time. Yeah,
absolutely.
That could have led to her death. Yeah,
that could have led to, and she thought after that reading, I got to change my boyfriends. And she ended up marrying a very nice young man and moved to the suburbs and had a couple of kids. So she absolutely shifted her lifestyle after that reading.
Right. So I think that's a better way to use it. It's like, okay, I'm getting a reading on where the energy is now. Yeah. Is this where I really want to be? Yeah. And then make a decision that's, you know, more in alignment with your preference. I need to ask you, how are we doing on time? Because there are things happening here.
There are things happening. All right. I have no idea I've lost all track of time, so I have no idea how long we've been chatting for, but we'll wrap it up, shall we?
All right.
So what would you like to finish with? What would you like to say to people?
Well, again, I mean, they can find out whatever they need to find out, whatever they would like to explore with regard to the Bashar information by going to bashar.org, bashar.org. They can find out about Zia Films by going to ziafilms.com, ziafilms.com, or First Contact, the whatisfirstcontact.com website. And again, really, I think it's just all about following your joy, following your excitement. That's what really works best. It's always worked for me even before I knew about Bashar. I just was never the kind of person who would do what didn't interest them. And it's always supported me, always, always, always. So I would say that the biggest thing to let go of is the idea that following your dreams can't support you, because it can if you are truly in alignment with what your excitement is. That's important to know the difference. But I would certainly encourage people to follow their dreams. And this is something I say in the documentary is, I'd rather be called crazy and follow my dreams than look back and regret that I never went down that path that I had an opportunity to explore that really would have made all the difference in the world. So that's really what I would like to leave people with, is be yourself as much as you possibly can, because no one else is going to be you. And the hardest thing in the world to be is to try to be someone else. So it's actually much easier to be yourself when you let go of all the fear that we've been brought up to believe in. I would encourage people to be themselves as much as they possibly can, whatever is really true for them.
Mm. And I would add to that too, that follow your excitement. Often what you're really fascinated in, like what really interests you. You say same thing, but yeah, sometimes, like I remember being excited about art and dance and all that sort of thing, but what fascinated me was spirituality. It's like I couldn't get my head out of the books.
Well, do the thing that excites you the most first, that you're fascinated or curious or attracted to the most. That's the guiding principle for any other expression of excitement that'll come around through synchronicity anyway. So it's just really trusting that path and knowing that excitement, however you want to label it, is actually the physical translation of the vibration of your true frequency. That's why you're attracted to certain things, because this is what's correct for you at the moment. It's important to understand the difference between excitement and anxiety, because sometimes people will disguise their anxiety as excitement, and sometimes people will actually dampen their excitement instead of letting it be what it really needs to be because they're afraid to follow it. So knowing the difference between the two is important. But once you do know the difference, it's very important to stay true to that, because that is your true frequency. That's who you really are. And when you let go of the limiting beliefs, you'll find that it actually is the path of least resistance. So what I want to do is thank you for allowing this particular opportunity to discuss all these wonderful things, and for being a part of that new society and community that's exploring all this, because that's what makes all the difference in the world, is that these things are talked about and understood and explored and brought, no pun intended, down to earth.
No pun intended.
Yeah.
Darryl Anka,
thank you.
Thank you so much for being on the show. It's been really such a blessing and so fascinating. It's been wonderful. Loved it.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much, Karen. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much for joining us for another enlightened conversation on Accentuate the Positive. If you would like spiritual guidance from my guides, blissful beings, go to karenswain.com for a reading, or to listen to more enlightened thought leaders share their wisdom. Go to the listen page on karenswain.com and choose who you want to listen to. All the podcasts are also available on iTunes. Remember to check us out on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, you name it, we're there. Until next time, bye for now.
You feel like that's what you want to